Now, one of the most significant parameters on which a candidate decides about an MBA program, whether in India or an MIM outside India, is the fact that what is the return on investment and what is my initial investment, right? So first of all, let's try to get an understanding about the Indian MBA scene, right? The Indian MBA scene is typically dominated by an entrance exam called CAT, right? However, there are other exams like SNAP, NMAT, IIFT, XAT also for certain in these schools. But largely speaking, common admission tests conducted by the IIMs dominate the entrance exam, right? Once the entrance exam is through, then you typically go through the group discussion, personal interview and essay writing phase. That is the second phase, which is called the personality assessment phase. And then you are finally offered a seat in a reputed Indian B school, right? Now the average cost, if you're looking at Indian B schools, and I'm talking about the top 10 B schools, top 15 B schools of the country, it would be hovering around 20 to 25 lakhs, and that I'm talking about the tuition fee, right? You can add the living expenses and your other miscellaneous expenses. So roughly speaking, an Indian MBA comes at a price tag of around, let's say 30 lakh rupees, right? And it's a 2-year program, obviously. Now, there's one very significant portion that I would like to touch upon, is that although the Indian MBA is touted to be a 2-year program, it's actually not a 2-year program, right? Because the session typically starts somewhere in June, July, right? And there's a summer internship break of around 2 months, 2.5 months. And the session typically ends in February, March. So effectively, it's an 18-month course only. Right, it's a misnomer that we have in India that it's a 2-year MBA program, right? The typical ROI, if you want to calculate the average salary packages from these 15 B schools, again would hover close to around 20 lakhs per annum. And this is, I'm talking about the CTC, that is the cost to company. What you get in hand is different, obviously a bit less. So let's assume that you take an education loan of around 80% of the amount. So let's say a 20 lakh loan. So you'll be able to repay a 20 lakh loan graduating out of an Indian B school in somewhere close to 2.5 to 3 years, because obviously you're not going to earn 20 lakhs and return the loan. You're going to have some spending also, you'll have some expenses also. So that is going to take care of it. And obviously India would tax you also. You'll have to pay your income taxes also. So it would take around 2.5 to 3 years to repay your education loan for an MBA in India. The typical companies that are coming to India are some of the consultancy majors, FMCG majors like ITC, Godrej, Reliance, right? And a lot of IT companies like TCS, Infosys, Convergys, Cognizant, right? So these are the major companies which are recruiting at the Indian B schools. Now coming to the MIM part, right? Again, the entrance exam for most of the MIM courses is the GMAT exam, right? GMAT can be taken anytime in the year. There's no hard and fast date of a GMAT exam. You can take GMAT as much as 5 times in a year, and it's conducted by GMAC, right? And it's a computer adaptive test. So once a good GMAT score of something around 650 plus is there with you, you can apply to some of the top 20 MIM colleges in the world. The typical process is simple. Once you are shortlisted on the basis of your GMAT score plus your SOP, statement of purpose, and letter of recommendations that you have sent along with your application is reviewed critically by some of the ex-students and professors, and then you are given an interview call. The interview typically happens over the internet, and you get your final offer letter if you're selected. The typical cost of doing an MIM abroad ranges between let's say 25 lakhs to 35-40 lakhs. The Duke Fuqua B school in US would be the most expensive one, touching close to 60 lakhs, right? Plus a living expense of around, let's say, $800 per month, right? That is basically brings it down to that amount, right? So that is the overall. I'm talking about the overall cost, right, including a $800 per month living cost. Now, when we talk about return from investment perspective, right, the typical salaries that MIM graduates are fetching these days is close to, let's say, $55,000 to $60,000. So roughly speaking, if you are investing close to, let's say, 35 lakhs, right, you are also earning close to 45 lakhs per annum, right? and with the tax structure prevailing in the country in which you are working, you should be able to repay this amount in around education loan. If you take an education loan, you will be able to repay this amount in again around 2.5 odd years. So basically, whether you do an MBA from India or whether you do an MIM from outside India, your ROI is basically almost the same, right? And you will be able to repay your education loan in around the same period, right? 2.5 years kind of a thing. But what is important to note here is once you repay your education loan, right, the cash flows in India would stagnate. This is a very important point. In India, the growth in the packages would not be very phenomenal. So let's say in a 5-year domain post MBA in India, you'll be able to reach 50% higher than what you started at, 50%, 60%. So if you started at around, let's say 20, you'll be at 30 lakh package kind of a thing, right? But in MIM abroad, right, the cash flow changes. You would have started at around, let's say 40, 42, but in 5 years time you could be earning close to 75 lakhs. So the cash flows change. So obviously an MIM outside India gives you an advantage.